Hey guys, I'm gonna wait maybe just a minute to make sure that everybody that wants to come join us for our class is able to get here. So just a minute. My name's Emily Boulin. I'm a licensed cosmetologist out of Baltimore, Maryland. I'm also a member on the Sally crew with Sally Beauty, and thank you for coming to DIY University at Sally Beauty, where today the class we're going to focus on is if you've already gone platinum and your hair's grown out, how are we going to refill that area? So today we're going to touch on that. It's going to be a loaded class, a lot of information. So for me, I'd love for you to have like a pen and paper, write down any questions you have. I am going to be demoing a little bit so that you can see how things are done, but the information is what's going to be so important in this class, because there are reasons why we get banding or we have bleed marks or things are unlifting, like lifting unevenly. And I want you to avoid that. And having the information is half the battle. So make sure you write things down as you hear them, understanding when to do retouches, things like that, because having that information is going to save you a lot of issues. And it's my goal that we erase fail videos, that we can do our hair at home without a lot of mistakes. And let me know where you guys are from, because Baltimore, Maryland over here, I'm East Coast. I know we get a lot of like West and Central. And last time I had a class on here, I know I got a lot of Sally Beauty managers, which I think is so great, because I know you guys are kind of like the front line and helping people out with their products. So I want you, as well as them, everybody, to be able to do this at home. This is a very loaded topic. Today's class is going to be kind of like the basics, and in the future we can work on top of those basics. But because it's a lot of information, we might not cover everything today. And today we're just going to focus on the lightening process, because a lot of times when we're using lightener, it's called a double process. And what that means is we're going in with our first step, we're going to refill our regrowth, and then we're going to go tone. Today I will not be discussing toning in great depth. We're just going to be talking about the process of refilling our regrowth area. So I think we've waited a couple of minutes. I'm going to jump right into it. So before we begin, I want to tell you exactly how this class is going to run. So you might have noticed my mannequin. The regrowth on both sides of her head are different. And that's because I'm going to show you two different scenarios, because you actually can't lift these two scenarios the same way. So I want you to know, if you're going to be relifting your hair, it's got to be done every 4 to 6 weeks. So the first part of this class, we're going to be working on this half of the mannequin so I can show you how that's done. And then the second part of the class, if you've waited beyond 6 weeks to refill your regrowth area, that's what I'm going to show you how to do, because it changes the process in which we create this look. So even though I'll be demoing the first half of class on half the head, it would apply to the entire head when you're doing this at home. Scenario 2, same thing. We're working on half the scalp, but it will apply because your whole head would look like this if you were fully platinum and then it grew out. Okay? So we've got two different lessons. And before we begin, as I said earlier, in case you jumped on a little bit later, I'm Emily Boulin. You can find me at Emily Boulin Hair, and I'm a part of the Sally crew. Thank you for coming to DIY University. You can find everything that I'm using today at Sally Beauty. So to get into it, let's make sure that we have the right products to create our refill. So one of the favorite things I have from Sally Beauty is going to be the Wella Lightener. This is the powder lightener. It'll give you 7 lifts of color. So it'll lift you all the way to that platinum. This is good for on-scalp and off-scalp applications. And the reason I say that is that not all lighteners are created equal. And if we're going to be applying lightener to the scalp, we need to make sure we're using something that is designed to be on the scalp so it doesn't irritate your skin. And then also something that's going to give us enough lift. And it does depend on which level you're starting at. So if you're a 3 or above, you'll be fine with this 7 lift. And when we're using that lightener, we need to make sure that we have our Wella developer. So today, I'm only gonna be using 20. I use anywhere when I'm a stylist in my own studio, so I use 10 and 20. I never use above a 20. If you're doing this correctly, you do not need to be using a 30 and above. And I'm gonna show you why that is. It comes with technique, but also just coming from a licensed person as well, we don't use above 20 on the scalp because we don't want to create skin burns or irritation. So we need to use these products responsibly in the way they're supposed to be used. So let's not use above a 20 on our scalp, because if we go higher, we run into a lot of trouble that way. So we've got our lightener, we've got our developer. For our other side, for if you've been waiting a while to fill your regrowth, you're gonna need foils. So I have Primar foils. This is also something that I use in my own studio as a professional, and you can get this at home at Sally Beauty. So big fan of these. They're nice and thick, they're easy to use, and they will insulate heat the way we want them to. And I'll be using a color track brush. This one's got a little bit shorter of a top on it, so I feel like I can get more precision. When things are longer, I feel like we get more of a swept effect. This will help me kind of pinpoint where I want to place things. And then, of course, I get a lot of stuff by Salon Care. So the first thing I'm going to say is gloves. Anytime we're playing with color or lightener, please wear gloves. We can't stress this enough, and I feel like it's one of the most overlooked things. So I'm actually going to put mine on right now so that I know I don't forget when I begin. But this is going to protect our hands, keep from irritation. That way we're not dipping our hands and mixing things. So I got these from Salon Care. I also got my bowl, my whisk, and have a shower cap nearby, because this is going to help us insulate heat as well in a very safe, protective way. And I also like to have on hand when I'm foiling the Ion pintail combs and Croco clips. So these are like heavy duty clips. If you go into Sally Beauty, you'll see a ton of clips used for styling and different things. I always default to these, especially if we're doing DIY projects, because we need the most tension possible, and if we're not professionals, we might not know how to like grip the hair correctly. These are always going to give you a secure hold, and they're great if the hair gets wet or we're coloring and that texture changes, because it's really going to secure everything on the head the way we need it to. So Croco clips are a big one for me. These are all items. If you're coloring your hair at home, I suggest you have all of this on hand. So now that we've gotten into the products that we're going to be using, let's talk about that timing again, because understanding is half the battle when we go in to refill our platinum regrowth. So first scenario, first part of class, we're going to be working on filling in a little bit of regrowth. So you should be getting a little less than an inch if you've been waiting 4 to 6 weeks. The reason you have to do 4 to 6 weeks applications, and if you wait longer, it's a problem, and this is why. When your hair grows out from being platinum, the first amount of hair that's coming from the scalp, that's like brand new hair. I like to call it baby hair. It hasn't completely matured. So it's got a little bit softer of a texture. It just kind of sprouted from the scalp. It's easier to manipulate because it's a little thinner. On top of that, whenever we're doing a platinum touch-up, our bodies are around 98.6 degrees, right? So that's almost 100 degrees. We're emitting heat. So when we place lightener on our hair, the closer it is to the scalp, the more heat that hair is receiving. So when you combine that, the new grow out, the texture of it being thin, the fact that we have heat emitting off of it, we're gonna get a really nice, pretty, clean lift on that. If we wait longer, that hair grows out beyond that point, beyond 6 weeks. What's going to happen is that hair is starting to mature. It's going to harden a little. And we're also getting away from that warmest point of heat. So what happens is we end up processing the hair at 2 different places. So everything that was close to the scalp is going to pull really nice like we planned. But anything that grew out farther than that length is actually going to create a band, because it's not going to reach that nice pale yellow level when we're lifting. It's only going to get maybe an orange, maybe a bright yellow, depending on what your hair level is. That's why it is so important. My number one takeaway with timing is If you are a platinum, you must retouch your regrowth every 4 to 6 weeks. If you are a dark level, maybe more you would consider yourself a brunette or lower, you need to be doing it closer to the 4-week mark. If you are low-level blonde, you can get away with a little bit more, but you'd be closer to that 6-week point. So darker, earlier, lighter, you can wait a little bit, but once you go beyond 6 weeks, we'll be moving on to the second part of class and how to handle that. So now that we've got the timing down, we're gonna move into our first application. So we're going off the scenario that you've been really good about keeping up with your hair, your platinum grew out, and now it's time for your root retouch within 4 to 6 weeks. So I'm gonna use my pintail comb to help me section. And another big point, please section. You'll hear me say in every single class, I need you to section. If you don't keep your sections clean, none of this will turn out the way you want it to. So when we do our first part, and this is gonna be, we're gonna pretend like this whole scenario is on the whole head. We're just gonna be working off this side today though for the scenario. So we're gonna part from the very front of the head in the middle, all the way to the back in the middle. So we've got that nice, clean part. From there, we're going to create a quadrant. So we're going to find right behind the ear, and we're going to come down from that middle part and create the next section. So right now, we've got 4 if we do that on all sides. So to secure that, I'm going to pull this down. I'm going to twist the hair, and it's going to create tension to help me keep those sections clean because we don't want them rubbing off into each other. So, drop my comb there. We're going to secure that. And then, because she's got short hair, it's kind of like a bob. When we come down through here, I'm actually going to secure it lower. If she had longer hair, you could keep it up higher, but everything's going to fall out because the hair's shorter underneath. So we're just going to secure that. And we would have repeated that on every single quadrant. So she's got 4 sections, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. And so to begin, because we're just gonna do a touching on scalp application, I'm gonna use 20 volume today because we can see her level is very, very low. So we're gonna need that extra power. If you have a higher level or thinner textured hair, a lot of times you can get away using a 10 volume. So it's good to experiment to see if that works for you. But I'm gonna take my lightener, and whenever I'm mixing, I like to do, for an on-scalp application, a 1-to-1 ratio, which means I'm using the same amount of my powder lightener and the same amount of my developer in equal parts. It'll always let you know what the measurements are when you're reading the instructions on these products. So don't panic if you don't remember that, just follow the instructions. And whenever I'm mixing, I use a whisk. I don't use my brush because mixing with your brush can actually destroy your brushes. So with the whisk, instead of going really, really, really fast to try and get all the clumps out, we do want to get the clumps out, but it's going to help if you go slower because it's going to help oxygen get in there, and we're going to break down those clumps over time, and we get a smoother looking lightener. So once we have that mixed, we're going to put our whisk aside. And I'm gonna very thoughtfully tap my color track brush into the lightener. And the first step we're gonna do is we're going to trace the perimeter. So before we get into our sections, I'm gonna start with the back. Making sure I have tension so that nothing overlaps, because the biggest part about this is going to be we can't let that lightener sit on top of hair that's already lightened. And let me explain why that is. And it's a big deal because I think sometimes we get a little careless and we go, oh, we should be caring about every step. So if your hair is already a level 9, 10, close to platinum, and we put lightener on there, there's no levels above that. Above a pale yellow, it's just white. If you lift your hair all the way to a white without any pigment in it, there's nothing left for it to stand on. So what happens is if we overlap and we go to lift that platinum hair again, that hair can end up on the floor because there's nowhere left for it to go. So you actually end up ruining the integrity of your hair and it can shred out. So what we want is to completely avoid overlapping any of our lightener on already lightened hair. Now, a good tip as well, if you're worried about this and you're like, well, I'm doing this at home, I can't really see the back of my head, how am I going to be able to make this happen? I highly suggest if you ever need to use the buddy system, this would be the process that you do. So if you have anybody at home, a parent, a friend, somebody that can see the back of your head for you and help you get precision, I would definitely recommend it. Also, what you can do if you are stuck doing it by yourself is if you have conditioner or any type of barrier cream, which you can buy at Sally Beauty, not only can you trace it on your skin around these areas to protect your skin so that you're not getting lightener everywhere, but you can also tap it over the blonde areas so that if you did happen to get maybe a little overlap, because it is really hard to be precise, it would act as a barrier between the lightener and your hair. So that's also something to keep in mind. So moving on to that first step, we're gonna go ahead and when I tap her perimeter, notice I'm just lightly tapping. I'm not brushing it through the hair. I'm not treating it like a comb. I'm gonna be precise. I'm going to see where it needs to be tapped, and I'm just tracing that area. And always looking at where, and notice I didn't load my brush up with too much product, but saturation is important. So making sure we're tapping a thick amount without it dripping everywhere. And that 1-to-1 ratio that I spoke about when we mixed our lightener, it's gonna make it have a thicker consistency. So it's easier to just tap that on without getting a bunch of dripping and lightener everywhere. So I'm gonna go ahead and move so you can see what the back looks like. Same thing. So I'm gonna make sure before I even go into anything, we've got good tension, nothing's overlapping, and I'm gonna just tap this perimeter. We're basically tracing. So think of it like tracing the section you made. Takes you back to like being younger in art class. So we're just gonna tap that section. We've traced it and make sure we get the underneath. See that? And we're tapping there. So we've done the perimeter. So that was our section. Now we're gonna break it down into a subsection. So taking my pintail comb, I'm gonna pull down 1/8 of an inch of hair, about that amount. So it's a very, very thin section. Thin sections are very important. If you do too thick of a section, you can get bleeding, you can get blotchiness. Some of the hair won't get touched. So saturation, making sure everything gets touched is what's so, so important. So what I'm gonna do to work through my subsections is now I'm gonna go up horizontally and work my way up this section. So I'm gonna pull this hair a little bit out and a little bit down so I've got good tension. Making sure, yep, I tapped this when we went through on the perimeter, pulling that down, I'm gonna hit the front section of that area. And now I'm not like dramatically, like I said, I'm not pushing it into the hair, I'm not pushing it into the skin. I'm tapping, and when I am swiping, I'm going parallel with the hair. I'm working with it, I'm going in that same direction, making sure I'm not tapping that blonde area. So we've got that loaded with product. It's saturated on both sides. We have not tapped the blonde. I can move on. So sometimes to make it easier, because we already have tension from that clip being in there, you can tap the underneath part of that. And then when we move on, we're gonna do another 1/8 of an inch section. So I'm gonna pull that down and clip the rest back up. I'm gonna do the same thing. Now I'm not gonna mush these two sections together because we actually want the oxygen, we want the openness. That way we don't have any bleeding or any running of lightener. And I'm gonna tap that and kind of let him stay out. Now, if you get worried that you're gonna mush it together or you feel like all the hair is sitting on itself and it's spreading through the blonde, a great way to avoid that is, and we have this at Sally Beauty as well, Cotton, you can pull it out and you can place it in between each section because it'll create space without sucking moisture up from the product. So just so that we have enough time, I'm going to show you how we jump to the front so you can see how the front sections are done, but you would complete this process all the way up. So when you're done, the perimeter's done, every subsection of regrowth has been touched, and nothing that is blonde will have been touched. So when we get to the front, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to work on the perimeter first. So continuing the same process. And again, we're just going to tap. Make sure we have good tension. We're working within those sections. We're not going, it's all about staying in the lines. So the more you can do that, the better. And the way that lightener works, which I want to add, is notice we did our first section. So that's already started processing. The second it goes on the hair, it's working. So we began with this section. We're moving to these different sections. What you'll notice is this section will start changing colors before our last section. It is totally okay to rinse one section before the rest. And lightener does not work off of timing, whereas a lot of times if you're using color or a vivid, it'll say this will process for 45 minutes if it's gray coverage, or 15 minutes if it's a vivid, and we just kind of time it and then we're good to go. Lightener does not work off of timing. So a lot of lighteners, and this is just a rule of thumb, it'll say it on whatever lightener you're using. But I always remember around 45, 50 minutes, lightener becomes inactive. So its total process time is 50 minutes. Beyond 50 minutes, it'll still chug away at your hair, but it won't give you a lot of color difference. So it's always good to rinse after 50 minutes. And if you need some kind of reapplication, you can assess that moving forward. But after 50 minutes, you're not going to get much more lift out of it. So it's good just to rinse it. However, you always want to pull the hair and be done when it reaches a banana peel yellow. And what I mean is if you were to open a banana peel and look at the inside of the banana peel, it's like a very pale yellow color. It's got a very slight yellow to it, but it's almost a platinum color. It's just got a yellow undertone to it. So the outside of the banana is like hot yellow. The inside of a banana peel is where we want to be when we go to pull our lightener off of our hair. So you're really looking for color. You're not looking for a time. You just know at 50 minutes, not much good is going on after 50 minutes. So if you didn't reach your levels, you can still go ahead and rinse. But if you reach your level before 50 minutes, you can rinse. Leaving it on longer can overprocess the hair. So that's why if we started with this section and it changes that banana peel yellow, we could rinse this section first and let these continue to go. So just know that's always an option. Always keep an eye on where your lightener is developing. So now that we worked our way to the front, we went all the way through the back, we just did the perimeter of the front, we're ready to move through our subsections. So for this, I actually like to do more of a vertical, like I'm going up and down in my partings because I kind of want to continue what I was doing back here. I'm going to flip this hair on top, meaning all of this will be coming out and back onto that. So everything is moving this way as we continue. And you can even pull it out. Sometimes it's better to pull it out so that you know you're not brushing that lightener into the hair that's we've already touched. By pulling it out, we're getting good tension. We're just going to tap and push it over the previous section. As we work through the hair, that's going to make all of this come off of the face. So by the time we get to the front, everything will be this way. The reason I love that is we're keeping it out of our eyes, which is great because lightener should not be anywhere near your eyes. But it's also going to keep us neat, right? Because we worked through our sections and then we worked little by little through our 1/8 of an inch subsections. Again, 1/8 of an inch. It's very important that you're doing very thin sections. If you get lazy or you get rushed and you start doing chunkier sections, you're not going to get the results you want. So after we did all 4 quadrants and we approached it like this, what we would do then is if we wanted extra heat, I highly don't recommend you use a heat lamp, you use a blow dryer. If you don't have anything covering the hair, the lightener can dry out. If the lightener dries out before it's done working, it just won't work anymore. Dry lightener doesn't do anything. It has to stay hydrated. Also, heat, the reason it makes your hair color, get to the color you want it faster is because it's speeding up the chemical reaction, which is not great for your hair. So a nice soft way to do it naturally is to take our cap and place it over the head. And we're not going to smush the hair down. We're going to let it breathe. So we're just placing it because what that's going to do is the natural heat that's coming from your scalp is going to be in there, and it's going to softly intensify your results. That way it can give you a little speed, but not to the point where you've overly heated your hair and we end up with like chemical damage. So this is a great way to keep it moisture, keep all of that in there, keep the heat in there, and process. And again, once you see all of the regrowth hit that banana peel yellow, as long as it's been before 50 minutes, you're good to go. So you can rinse with lukewarm water, coolish lukewarm water, and then you would go through and you would tone your results from there. So that's the beginning of our double process, and that's if you were on track with updating your hair every 4 to 6 weeks. And so now we're going to move on to our second scenario, which I think is a little more common that I see in our DIY arena. So our scenario here, this is my girl. She maybe did her hair 6 months, maybe a year ago. She was platinum. The roots kind of got away from her. She did some vivid hair color, and this is how it's kind of faded. So she knows she needs to refill all of this and kind of re-put her vivids back on. So we're going to begin by doing the same sectioning. So we're going to do our 4 quadrants. So if you remember, we've got our middle part, and then we're going to go right behind the ear and create the other part of the quadrant. So we've got our middle, and now we're going to find, there's her ear. So we're going to go directly behind her ear. Everything forward is going to come this way. Everything back is going to go this way. We want good tension. So I'm going to twist that hair, get it up and out of the way. And then we're going to go ahead and do that back here. And you can already see we're moving through our first section that we did. And she's got a bob, so we're going to keep that pin really low. All right, so we have our quadrants, and we're going to start in the back again. However, remember, we talked about the different parts of your hair. You've got the little bit of regrowth, that's like our baby non-mature hair that changes really easily. And then it's the middle part of your hair. That's what's always going to get the band. It's everything that's kind of hardened. It's been dark for a while. It's farther away from the scalp, so it doesn't retain a lot of the heat for chemical reactions. We want to focus on this midsection that has not been lifted. And also, you definitely don't want to hit any lightener on your ends because the other part of our hair, and you have to remember, hair that's beyond 6 inches generally is now over a year old. Every 6 inches of hair growth is about a year. So this is years old. It's already been chemically altered. It's lower on her hair. It's dealt with the wear and tear of being on her head for many years. So we definitely don't want to get any lightener on these ends because that's how they fall to the floor. So we only want to focus on leaving out that regrowth because we know that'll change so quickly if we just throw, lightener right on that root. And we know this is going to take longer. So this is the approach we take. Same thing, our head would be in 4 quadrants. And we're going to take an 1/8 of an inch section. So we're still doing very thin, tiny sections. I'm going to pull this up just so you guys can see that. right? So I'll pull that section out of the way because he would be in the quadrant if we had our 4 quadrants going. All right, so we've got an 1/8 of an inch section. We don't want to hit this brand new baby hair area. We just want to hit that mid length. So what do? I'm going to take my Fermar foil and my pintail comb. And what I'll do is we're going to create a flag. So I'm just going to like bend about an inch over just to get good tension. So see how I can hang this foil off the end of my comb because I folded an inch over. The side that I folded over is going to go toward her neck, and I'm just going to place it directly underneath that 1/8 of an inch section. I'm pulling tension on the hair with my 2 fingers, and I'm pressing that against just for tension. I'm removing my pintail comb. I'm pressing this foil with this hand. I'm going to take my lightener, and if you move slowly, you can totally do this with 10 volume. Because we're using foils, it's going to incubate at a much faster rate. So if it takes you a while to get through your hair, slower is better. And the lower the volume, the slower it works. So you can use a very low volume when doing this process, and you will still get platinum results. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to paint, but I'm going to stay a centimeter, about 1/4 of an inch off of the scalp. I'm only going to paint right below a centimeter, and anything that's in that mid-level area that's brown. Now, I wouldn't normally take my hand off this, but I want you to see it. So you see how I've painted this midsection? I'm not getting anything that's blonde. I'm not getting the ends, and I'm not getting a centimeter to the top. I'm just painting that spot that needs that extra energy. So we're going to make sure that's saturated in a foil. And then what I'm going to do, let me get my positioning again. So we're here. We're going to fold that up into a foil. So we're going to pull the foil up. For the bottom ones, I like to fold twice. A, she's got short hair, so we're not bending the hair, but B, it's going to give us more security that it won't slip out. I'm using my little inch flap to tighten it. And then we're just going to bend these corners in to lock it. So that's our first 1/8 of an inch section. We've only painted the mid-level of the hair. And we're going to continue that process. So this is all very repetitive, just very tedious, and it's good to stay neat. So the next section, we're going to pull an 1/8 of an inch down and do exactly what we did. Now, I love having a bunch of croco clips because she's got a bob. It's hard to keep all of her hair up because of the little layers. So I can actually put 2. And now I definitely don't have to deal with any of that. So here's my next 1/8 of an inch section. We're going to take our foil. We're going to bend it an inch over. It's hanging on my comb. We're going to create tension. Pull this out. Use the same hand. Grabbing, and I'm doing this a little awkwardly so you guys can see, but normally you'd be standing directly in front of your section. I'm going to stay 1/4 of an inch off of the base, and I'm just going to paint this mid-level. And even if I have some vivid color, I'm not going to put lightener on it because what's living underneath that vivid color is blonde. You are already at a level 9, 10, even though it's green. So if I put lightener and sit that in a foil, that can fall off. So that's something you would handle after addressing the regrowth situation. So we're only touching the mid-shaft of the regrowth area, staying off a centimeter of that base and staying away from the ends and anything that's already been blonded before. Again, it looks like this. So now that we have it, we're going to fold. I'm going to fold twice. I'm going to use my comb to bend in the ends. And again, we're just going to work our way up the head. I'm going to jump because we don't have enough time. So I'm going to show you, because I would approach this differently than I did our platinum retouch. So when we get to the front here, I actually am going to now go into horizontal sections, whereas our first demo, we went vertically. We would pull down these sections and push them back so the hair would be out of the face. Because these are in foils, I want to do them horizontally. So I pulled out an 1/8 of an inch section, got my foil. I'm going to place that here. And do that. So we're following that same process. The next step and the final step is going to be, remember how we talked about when we're doing a platinum touch-up, we have to look for color and not timing? Same thing goes for here. So when we get through all the sections of the head, we're going to come right back to our first section. We're going to check our foils. When that lightener, when we open it, it should look like hot yellow. We want it to reach a hot yellow, right? So not the inside of a banana peel at this point. We want it to be the outside of a banana peel. We want it to be that bright side, because what we're going to do, once our foils hit that, we're going to slide them down, and we're actually going to paint the root now. So if I slide them, I'm going to tap that root, move the foil down. He's already slid. I'm going to tap the root, slide it down. That way, we know that the base picks up much quicker. So now that this has reached a hot yellow, I'm going to apply the lightener to the base that we didn't originally. And when they both process, they should both reach that inside of a banana peel yellow at the same time. Same thing would go for, so you go section by section. The first section you did will be the first one you tackle that way. The second section you did will be the second one. So again, you would, once you check it and you say, okay, it's reached a neon yellow, I'm going to pull this, tap that base, same thing. And you're just going to keep, but you keep everything in a foil because that's going to keep it neat. Continue to let it process. Once it reaches that banana peel yellow, you can rinse with lukewarm, coolish water, and you will have reached that pale yellow color, which you can then tone to be platinum again. So that was a quick little demo. I know it's a lot of information, but those are two different processes. They're completely necessary. So make sure you're touching up your platinum every 4 to 6 weeks. If you're doing your color correction process, meaning you have to hit the mid shaft before you touch the base, you can do that anytime after 6 weeks, but that's what's going to give you that nice even lift. Again, thank you for visiting DIY University with Sally Beauty. My name is Emily Boulin, and you can find me at Emily Boulin Hair on Instagram. And if you have any questions, you can forward them there. And I'll also take a couple right now before we wrap up. What's the best way to maintain your color as possible? So the right at-home care is going to set you up. For example, platinum hair like this needs a refresh because our hair wants to be warm. When we lift it through those red to yellow moments, and we never completely get out of yellow because, like I said, if we lift our hair to white, we've got nothing for it to hold on to. It has no more melanin left. So it always wants to go back to warm. There's nothing you can do to keep your hair from wanting to be warm. But that's why we have violet shampoos. You can buy a violet shampoo at Sally Beauty. It's something that you just use in the shower whenever your hair starts to get warm again, and it'll balance out your yellow because purple is on the opposite side of the color wheel than yellow. So when you shampoo with a violet colored shampoo, it's going to keep you platinum. You just don't want to overuse it, so only use it about once or twice a week depending on how often you wash your hair or how brassy your hair starts to be feeling. Also, keeping your hair healthy. A lot of things people don't realize. If your hair is not in good condition, it will not retain color. pH balance is so important. So after color processes, I believe the Ion line makes a post-color treatment, which is a pH balancer. Again, if you have questions about what some of these things mean, you can send me a direct message on Emily Boulin Hair on Instagram. But a pH balancer is something that's going to calm your hair down, seal the cuticle, and kind of make it retain color better. Because whenever we're lifting the hair, we're blasting the cuticle open, and we need something that's going to pull it back down and calm that pH down so it'll want to hold in our color. So keep your hair healthy, a lot of strength products, moisture products, post-treatment products, and anything that's gonna maintain color. And if you have a Vivid, there's also a lot of Vivid Deposit shampoos. I know they have Uberless, which is a bond treatment, great for platinums, that'll also deposit color while keeping your hair healthy. Do we have any more questions? I want my brown hair to go white. I don't know where to start. You want to let your brown hair go white. So I'm assuming you're growing in white hair, like you're naturally white, and have you been coloring it brown for a while? What you could do is do a series of foiling. Like you could do a lot of highlights to diffuse the brown areas. So getting a lot of baby light, like a thinner microweave, that would create a more natural breakup of color so that you could more easily grow it out. But I think it would be about breaking up that brown area so that it can match that platinum white grow out that you're having. So it's about breaking the bottom up so that it can more seamlessly blend with the top. Any more questions? The best product to use if you've gotten a lot of damage. Okay, I actually really love this question because this really applies, and thank you for asking it. So there are so many elements to keeping your hair healthy. One of the biggest things on the market right now are bond builders. So our hair is made up of 3 different types of bonds, like a lot of them are disulfide bonds. And when our hair gets damaged, it's because there's chips breaking away from our hair strands. And when those chips start to break away, that's when our hair starts to get skinny and sever and break apart. So bond builder is a really hot word right now. And if you go in, Uberless, which I just mentioned, is a product sold at Sally Beauty. It has a bond builder in it. They also just released a line of lightener that has a bond builder in it, which I'm going to start experimenting with. So when I do, I hope you guys are a part of that. But anything that has a bond builder is actually going to refill those little bonds that have been chipping away, and it's going to create the hair structure to be full again. So please use bond builders, look them up, find out how you can get a hold of those, or if you do chemically alter your hair, if you can find a lightener with a bond builder in it, that's a great move as well. But using bond builder treatments is number one that I always tell my clients. Strength is important. However, somewhere where people go wrong is you need keratin in your hair. Your hair is made of protein. Keratin is protein. So you have to put that back in because we kind of remove it when we lighten hair. The only issue with keratin is you cannot overuse it. You want enough of it, but not too much on weak hair. So get a good keratin treatment. You only use once every 1 to 2 weeks. You don't need to use it more than that, but that'll give you a jump on it with the bonding. And then the other ingredient, in my opinion, is moisture and hydration. So make sure you're getting moisture masks. So when you're combining shampoos and conditioners that are color safe, things that have moisture in them, along with your bond builders, along with a little keratin spray in, maybe when you're getting out of the shower, those are all the elements that are gonna help bring your hair back to life. Also, avoid heat damage, and if you have to use heat, make sure you're using a heat protectant because heat's the quickest way to break down chemically treated hair. Do we have any more questions? All right, well, if you have any more questions, because I believe we're wrapping up right now, you can contact me at Emily Boulin Hair on Instagram. Check out DIY University for more classes on the Sally Beauty platform. Follow Sally Beauty on Instagram because me, along with the other Sally crew members, will be putting up tips and tricks and info about products. If you like to watch us demo certain hair colors, also a great opportunity. We'll be your test dummy so that you don't have to. And be sure to follow the classes on DIY University. And everything I use today can be found at Sally Beauty. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you next time.